Hey, how you doing, guys? Recently I got kind of a question statement from one of my viewers on a video actually I just did yesterday, and he actually made some very good points. But I'm probably gonna go in there and clarify some of what I was meaning, talking about, and cover some things I didn't really talk about, which is relevant in this case. And this had to do with do smartphones threaten the video professionals? And let me go ahead and tell you his statement question here. Commodore 256, do appreciate you putting this in there because it is kind of a useful, definitely useful comment. While there is an advent of more professional equipment to make shots look better, like a 3-axis gimbal that reduces shake for the price that 20 years ago was the price of an amateur camcorders, and that's taking account inflation. Information more readily available to get more pro looks. 20 years ago, you had to go to libraries, bookstores, film schools, and instructional videos. I think now there's a lower barrier of entry, and that care and people who don't care, or something like that. I kind of edited that a little bit. And I think that's really one of the key things, the low point of entry, or low cost of entry, which I'm going to talk a little bit later. If anything, pros have to worry about the low budget people that care and the people who don't care messing up the shot. So I'm kind of going to go over it, and actually I should have in the not the comment section, but the other information. I should actually put the link to the article, which I might actually do. And I may actually reread the article again. But I think this article was really focusing on the amateur versus pro. And the primary, I think, thing with this is the amateur's primary motivation is low cost rather than hire a professional. They're going to do it themselves. Save money on weddings, recording, whatever. It could be audio or something like that. So I was kind of geared it toward that. Now, really, I consider 3 classifications. Okay, we talked about amateur on the lower scale, professional on the highest scale, and there's actually a third classification in between called the prosumer. Now, perhaps maybe this is what the Commodore 256 was talking about, and I didn't really go into it because I think the article is more focused on the amateur versus professional. Like I said, I'll probably reread it just to make sure. But the prosumer are often trying to are still quite a bit different than the amateur, because it's not just a low cost they're worried about. They want to get better quality. They're often going to spend a lot more money than the amateur. And I think that's the biggest difference. I think most amateurs think, well, it's good enough. I've got an iPhone. I can take pictures, save money at the wedding or in venue, whatever. Or I can take video with my cell phone. And of course, those are viable options. But usually the prosumer is often looking toward even going toward the professional or getting paid to actually for their work. And I consider a professional, the loose definition is somebody who gets paid for their work at least on a semi-regular basis. And I consider myself a professional because I often do it for money, some weddings and other things. Now, I'm not doing this full time. Of course, I'm passionate about what I do as well. And I think a lot of prosumers are that way as well. And so I'm looking through my show notes. I don't want to miss anything here. And I give you an example. The pro recording industry who make albums for different musical groups, solo acts, and then go on touring is really a great example because I remember years back, maybe 10 years ago, perhaps, when you could actually make a your own album on a desktop computer, so the low cost of entry was very low to actually do this. And really, that's not quite the same thing, because there's other things you have to take into account for, from amateur, prosumer up to the professional level. And like I said, I give you an example, the recording industry, because you got to think of promotion. You got to have connections within the recording industry to make it big. Resources, touring, all this takes money. And a lot of times amateur doesn't have that kind of, pull for that. So, I mean, it's great for if you're a small-time recording artist, independent musician or something like that. There's a whole, platform for that. But if they're trying to make it big into the recording industry, touring, the big concerts, Super Bowl, whatever, that's much different. And it's funny because even back then, the professionals were worried about this low cost of entry, because they're afraid these amateurs, prosumers, are going to take over their jobs. And in many cases, that's simply not true. And we even see that today. They feel threatened, but I seen the same thing when, of course, it was Final Cut Pro 7 for many years, and then they went to Final Cut Pro 10. They rewritten the whole program. They lowered the price down to $300, and they were actually targeting the prosumers and professionals who's moving up from iMovie, perhaps. And a lot of video professionals felt threatened by that, because they figure, well, if you make it accessible to everyone, they're going to, compete with us. But still, I mean, that's still much different, because you really got to know how. You get to gain the experience and many things like that. And I mean, it's lighting, it's knowing how to use your equipment, it's how to take certain shots. It's really, more than that. So I wanted to clarify on many specifics for that question, and for not just that single viewer, but I think it was good to clarify in general the prosumer classification too. So give me your thoughts on that, and thank you for that question there, Commodore 256.